Well, how's it going, backpackers? Dave here with Off Grid. I'm into backpacking, hiking, camping, and gear. Coming at you with another two-part series, and this time, and the reason why I'm doing this is because I didn't want to drone too long on any one particular video. I wanted to keep this first one in particular a little bit short, and then get into the really good stuff in part two. So if you're not subscribed to the channel and you're interested in time trials, then I'm going to be looking at a couple of different backpacking pots and stove options, and I'm also going to be doing a time trial, kind of like a versus video with those 4 different pieces. So 2 different pieces to this system here. You've got your cook pot, and then you also have your stove system. So I'm going to be comparing 2 different stoves to 2 different cook pots, and then doing time trials for those as well. But today, in this first video here, the only thing that I'm going to do is compare at a very top level 2 different pots here, so that I'm not like diving into all the other tech specs and everything on all of this stuff into that next video. So the 2 that I'm gonna be looking at today are, the first one is the Fire Maple Petrel UL pot, and the second one here is the tried and true Jetboil Stash. I've done videos, I think, on both of these, at least at a top level, as far as like an unboxing first looks. If you want all the different tech specs, you know, and kind of like first look type of stuff, head on over and check out those videos and come back to this one. But today I'm just going to be doing a head-to-head on different categories for these 2 guys here, and then giving you my personal opinion as to which one that I would go with overall at the end of this video. So I've got a few different categories here that we're going to be looking at. First is going to be price, and then we're going to get into the volume, the overall build quality, the safety of it, and then the weight and the time trials. I think that's about 6 different categories. And the reason why I said time trials is because I'm just going to speak about it at a top level. I'm not going to get into the specifics of the time trials, but it's kind of important in this video as well as the next video when I'm talking about the stoves. And then the fuel usage I'm going to keep out and leave specifically in the next video for the stove comparison. So let's dive right into it. The first category that I have is going to be the overall price. Not a surprise for this one here. If you're familiar with anything about these pots, then you know that the Fire Maple option is the budget-friendly option, and that one's going to be a lot cheaper. And there's a couple of different reasons for that. The first of which is because you can only buy this by itself. You don't have to buy it as a stove kit combo, although you can if you wanted to. But if you wanted to just pick up the pot, you can do that. Jetboil, you can't. They're, for whatever dumb reason, really into just selling an entire stove kit. But the problem is most people already have stoves and they only really want to round it out. So if you're kind of just starting out and you want to look at a complete stove kit, maybe you give Jetboil a look, but overall, for the price, just for the pot, the Petrel is going to win that one. And we're gonna get into the price. So I'm gonna save that one. I have another additional rant on this, but I'll save it for the price. The next category that I want to get into is going to be the overall volume and or capacity here, right? So you can kind of think of volume in a couple of different ways here. The first of which is the overall capacity, or how much water you can fit into each one of these containers here, each one of these pots. And then the second that I'm going to talk about is going to be the overall volume when in your pack, right? So let's talk about the overall volume as far as like the capacity of the pots goes and how much water you can fit into it. Jetboil is a little bit bigger. You got 0.8 liters, or I think that conversion is like 800 milliliters compared to 600 milliliters in the Fire Maple pot here. Now, for me personally, and even if you're going out with another person, for a solo person, you don't really need much more than like a 550 mil pot. This comes in at 600. That to me is like the sweet spot, definitely for one person. You can also fit, again, like I said, like a couple of cups in this. It comes in, I think, a little bit over a couple of cups. So even if you're out with like 2 people, you're out with your spouse, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, then I still think that the 600 mil is going to do you just fine. The Jetboil, I think, is a little bit of an overkill. This is really for like a little bit larger parties, or if you just have to boil a ton of water. So to me, that's a little bit of an overkill. So that in and of itself, it really depends on how you look at it there, but the Petrel is a little bit more perfect for me and my needs. And then let's talk about the overall volume in your pack. So for me personally, and I've gone out with a couple of different pots. I haven't tried the Petrel out in the field on a trip yet, but it looks very similar in overall design, diameter, and height and everything to the Toke series. A little bit taller because it's got the flux ring on the bottom. Super pro for both of these, obviously. You can notice here, if I hold them up, that looks weird. If I hold them up here, the stash right here, you can tell is a little bit wider, right, than the petrol pot. And the petrol here, if I'm trying to like hold it up a little bit, as far as like the overall height, the petrol is going to come in a little bit higher here, right? So again, less internal capacity on this one. This one's taller, but it also isn't as wide. And for me, the winner on this particular category, again, is going to go to the petrol, because I've taken the stash out on the field, and the short and fat versions of anything, think of like a really micro version of like a bear vault, you know, container, right? And you're kind of getting in line with what I'm thinking about here. This is just more awkward to try and fit in your pack. I've noticed trying to fit it in my bear bag or something else like that, or just by itself. If you have like a top pocket, side pocket on your pack, it's just really difficult to find just the right spot in order to make this work, more so than your taller, more cylindrical type of pieces of gear, I should say, or just overall pieces of gear. So for me, again, I'm going to go with the petrol on that one. Pro tip on this one too, be careful with these flux rings at the bottom here. They are a little bit more jagged, so if you put them in a DCF bear bag or something like that, it could more easily rip through, so just be on the lookout for that. Next category we're going to go into here is going to be the overall build quality. And this one is also a tough one. I'm going to split this into a couple of different pieces into this category as well. We're going to be talking first about the lid, and then the second is going to be this flip lock, which both of them have. First, let's talk about the lid here. The Jetboil Stash is notorious for having a pretty dumpy lid. It's pretty chintzy, pretty, you know, it's just a piece of plastic. They have a little cutout for, you know, you to drink through for your coffee and whatnot, and I've heard that pops off. It's also doesn't have anything else really to grab once the water is boiling, so if you want to pop the top, you either have to have, you know, some sort of pot gripper or your towel or something to try and pop it off. I've gotten burned, I've gotten singed with this, just like trying to pop it off and the steam hit me as well. Like, it's not that easy of a lid to take off, versus you've got the petrol pot here, which just has this little like rubber nub here at the top, very easy to take off. They both don't really lock in. It doesn't have a gasket. Neither one of them really have a gasket, and it's easy to just like, you know, spill over. If you spill it over, then it's gonna pop off no problem. But I really like the design of the petrol pot here, a little bit easier. They both have like strain holes in it, but the petrol I think is a little bit better in that regard. The second piece I was going to talk about here is going to be this flip lock handle. Now both of them have flip locks. When you pinch them and then open them, they lock. You can hear the click into place, and they both feel really sturdy. Oop, let's knock that over. When they lock into place, they're both great in that aspect. However, where they differentiate here as far as the overall build quality, again, is going to be at this hub right here. So the Jetboil Stash is going to win this category because this hub piece is just a lot more well designed, well thought out. And it's because it's a little bit more curved at the top here, so when you go to lock it, it's pretty smooth, and when you go to glide it back out, it's also very smooth. So there's not that much of a sticky action kind of going on there. Petrol pot is just a lot more chintzy and doesn't really work quite as well. It sticks in both different regards, so I'm getting a little bit better at kind of you know, pinching it and trying to close it. But you notice when you go to close it, it doesn't really want to lock into place. A lot of times I find myself having to like use both of my thumbs to try and push this out here in order to get it to lock. And if it doesn't lock, like if it's kind of stuck, then like that there, where it doesn't like pop out quite as easily because of the overall design, then it has the potential to, you know, have stuff kind of pop out of that. So it just doesn't lock quite as easily. Maybe that'll get better with time, but I just noticed that the hub piece on the Jetboil is a little bit better on that one. So kind of a wash up there. I like the lid of the petrol better, but I like the flip lock of the Jetboil a little bit better in that area. All right, next category here is going to be the overall safety as far as like, you know, knocking something over or whatnot. I think this one also is arguably a wash. If you get the whole Jetboil system with their stove, then you'll notice that it has little feet on it that kind of lock around this flux ring here. And same thing with the petrol pot, most of their stoves, and these have actual cutouts, which the Jetboil doesn't have. where the feet kind of sit in if you have you know, the 3-foot design or the Tri-Flex design, and that feels really sturdy there as well. That's going to come back into play with the time trials there. Kind of a crazy time trial that I had with trying these two out. It was nuts. Next category here is going to be the overall weight of each of the units. On my scale, Jetboil comes in at 5.15 ounces, and then the Petrel comes in at 5.85 ounces, so about 0.7 ounces heavier for the Petrel here. And again, if you remember from the capacity, this one holds less. So not only does the Jetboil hold more, but it also weighs less on your scale. So the Jetboil edges it out there, but again, as far as the price point goes, you kind of have to make that distinction if you want to be a gram weenie in that regard. Under an ounce there, not much of a difference. So Jetboil wins that category, but not by much. And then the last category here is going to be the overall time trials that I'm going to cover real briefly without getting into any of the specifics. Again, I'm going to cover this in the next video, but with all of the time trials, the Jetboil with all of the stove combos and everything still edges out the Petrel pot. And I believe, again, it's because of the overall design and the build of the pot here. I've noticed with shorter and squatter or shorter and wider pots, the dispersion of the water helps with the overall boil times and getting those boil times down. When you have something that doesn't have as much of a diameter as the Petrel here and is a little bit taller, then it takes longer for the heat to travel through the pot in order to boil it up. So I wasn't surprised that this didn't beat the Jetboil times. It did come close. I was actually surprised with how close it kind of came, but the Jetboil is always going to win in the time trials there. And again, mostly it's because the overall design of the pot, not necessarily the tech on the flux ring. I think that's getting pretty close here with a lot of the other competitors, including Fire Maple here. But the Jetboil is going to win in the overall time usage. All right, that's going to wrap it up here. I'm going to try to close this one off and try to rifle through this one as quickly as possible. So you'll notice here that it's sort of 50-50. I don't know what the count is here as far as like who wins each category, but my ultimate favorite and what I'm going to choose more so in the field is going to be the Fire Maple pot, believe it or not. And that is because of a few different reasons. It's going to come down to price point for a lot of different folks, and then it's going to come down to, you know, how much you really care about like time trials and fuel usage. So the fuel usage, again, I'm gonna go over more so in the next video in regards to the stove, but for the price, you can't beat it. The fact that you got to buy this as a system, I was lucky enough I was able to get this off of another YouTuber and got a discount for just buying this. But again, if you're looking at the system, it's like 150 bucks for basically like a pot, a stove, and a really cheap stove stand. Essentially means it's around $75 a piece. And this one at the higher end is like 30 bucks, and I've seen it as low as around $24. Like, you can't beat that. This is like in the Tokes category. And I think for a lot of people, you know, budget is going to come into play there. So it's really up to you and what you decide is most important when you're looking at different categories of what to buy. But I think for the majority of us, this Petrel pot is going to do just fine. So, and it's not only that, but again, like how it fits in my pack, I think this is going to fit a lot easier and in a lot of different configurations more so than this Stash. I found myself not wanting to bring this on more than a few trips now because of how like bulky and awkward it is to try and fit in my pack, regardless of the amazing boil times that I get with this pot here. So the Petrel pot is going to be, I think, my new favorite as far as like cutting down the overall boil times when I'm out there. If I want to grab a pot with a flux ring, I think I'm going to grab this guy more often than not. But let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Which one do you prefer? Which one kind of looks like a better option for you? And again, stick around for that next video where I'm going to be diving into the, I had a couple of different surprises in the B-roll that I was shooting for the time trials of those stoves. I'm going to be going over the stoves, comparing the stoves and picking my favorite there as well, and showing you the actual time trials and the specifics on that in that video. So stick around if you're not already subscribed. Other than that, give me a thumbs up if you like this video, and remember guys, if you're headed off grid, make sure you do your research and make it a safe one, and I'll catch you on the next one.